met when we were 13, and we were in 8th grade, and we were best friends through school. We didn't date until pretty much the very end of college. We started dating. We got married a year or two out of college. We've been married 19 years. We have a 13-year-old who is in the middle school program, and he's a rising 8th grader, and we have an 11-year-old who is getting ready to be in 6th grade.
I'm a general contractor, build houses for them.
And I'm an auditor for the government, but not the IRS, so I audit defense contractors.
March 11th, I was, wow, any other day, you know, finishing a house.
I was out of town for work, so I had been gone since, it was a Wednesday, I had been gone since Monday. So it started out normal. He has the kids. When I'm gone, he has to do mom and dad duty. So you're taking them to school,
Yeah, taking them to school. You know, we were finishing a house for my brother. And I don't know, just one of the last things I always do is get the hot water started up, clean the house, and we were kind of in that mode, and had been messing with a hot water heater for a while. Pretty much knew that it was defective, and probably, you know, I at some point realized that, you know, I was having problems with the hot water heater. Wouldn't like trying to smell propane, never smelled propane or anything like that, the gas. And wow, had walked out of the house to let it dissipate to make sure, you know, everything was safe, and come back in probably 30 minutes later after being outside, and went to light the hot water heater and was in a pretty severe flash fire, blew out windows in the basement. Wow, I don't know, you know, it happened so quick. You know, I lit the lighter and I knew I was in trouble instantly. You know, I mean, it, you know, saw the flames, the entire basement was engulfed. I just remember running out, throwing my hat off, smacking at my head, making sure I wasn't on fire. And the first thing out, I just remember saying a prayer, thank you, Jesus. You know, I turned around and noticed that it blew the windows out of the basement. Some of the windows weren't locked, and it blew them open. And just right off, I knew that, you know, he had protected me. I mean, you know, my eyes weren't burnt yet. I saw all the flames. It was burning, but, you know, I mean, was not on fire, had kind of an instant sunburn, but almost immediately, you know, had put water on that, cooled them down, and I mean, it went from a burn to a minor steam, but
went back in the house, turned off all the gas.
Yeah, went back in the house.
Made sure
My brother was the only other person there with me, and he knew that there'd been an explosion. I mean, he had went up the stairwell, and Jason had, you know, felt the pressure going up the stairway, pushed him over. So he was already calling 911. At some point, I'd pulled my sleeve back up, and the skin had separated. You know, I pretty much knew that, you know, I'm gonna need some medical attention, but he called the ambulance, the EMS, and they sent an ambulance out. When the EMS actually opened the door and looked at me, in his sense of urgency, probably scared me a little bit. You know, pretty much immediately put me in an ambulance, cut my shirt off, put 2 IVs. And I remember getting, you know, I reckon scared at that point. You know, thinking, I remember asking him the question, you know, I'm gonna be all right, ain't I? And he answered me, telling me, you know, we're gonna take you to UNC Burn Center, it's number 3 in the country. They'll take great care of you. And at that point, I remember shutting my eyes, and I can't tell you what I said, but I don't remember opening them until I got to the emergency room and they opened the doors. So probably about the 4th day, I know I had a roommate across from me, and I'd seen the guy day after day. I mean, he walked by, just paced in. His wife didn't know what he was in there. Or, you know, he was actually not in the hospital. He was just visiting. He had a relative in the room across. And I just remember one night, probably the 4th day, he stuck his head in to tell me I was looking better. And started telling us his story about his wife being in the hospital, and she was burned pretty severely, and she was the one actually there, but he had lost his best friend, as he described him, but he was actually his son-in-law.
His stepson.
His stepson.
It was his wife's son.
It was his wife's son, but he said, you know, they were fairly close in age. It was his second marriage. So he had died in the ICU where we were at 2 days earlier, and didn't, you know, survive it. He was just telling me what a great guy he was, you know, and I just remember him bragging on him. And everything he described was a fruit of the Spirit. And I remember telling him, I hope he's in heaven and he ain't hurting anymore. And that's when he told us he wasn't, you know, he told me, he said, you know, he wasn't a real religious man. And he told me he wasn't a religious person. And I told him that, you know, Jesus wasn't real religious either. And when I told him that, his eyes lit up, you know, literally lit up. And I remember him sticking his finger up. He did that. You know, he said, I'm confused about that. And I said, well, there's no confusion. You know, the religious leaders of his time put him on that cross, you know. They had him killed, you know. And, you know, just told him how much Jesus loved him. And, you know, if he didn't know him, to keep praying to him. He'd tell, you know, when he heard him talk back, he would know that he knew him. And that was the first experience, you know.
That was the first time that
I felt like that's what I was doing. But when that man walked in, I knew, I mean, you know, I had to tell him about Jesus.
He, I will say, and you're not he's not as verbal, you know, and it was definitely a God thing to see God's hand on him through the whole experience. It was, he gave him words that I've never seen him have before. It was very, very, very clear that being in that hospital wasn't about what had happened to him or me or our family. It was very much about having the chance to let other people see the peace that he had as he walked through this. And I mean, because there was peace. There was tremendous peace through it. And we have a lot of unsaved friends that I really feel like were able to see how real God is. And even they will tell you, I mean, they know that God is real now because what they saw him go through and what the Lord did, carrying him through it.
After that night, we were able to speak to him. They moved us to the other side of the hall. I'm not even sure I've seen him anymore. But we were brought into a room with a guy, Mr. Gamble's. He was in a house fire. Bad spirits, terrible spirits. Very grouchy, just, you know, you could tell he probably was praying not to make, you know, praying to die, not to live.
Yeah,
and he wanted prayer,
he wanted somebody to pray with him.
But I don't know, you know, for 2 hours, you know, we'd only been there 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah, it was in the beginning.
And I just remember after that, I just thought, unbelievable, you know.
Well, with Mr. Gamble, I remember after I prayed with him, I came back, and his eyes were full of tears, and he looked at me and he said, now we know why God moved us here. He wanted me, after we had prayed, he told me, he said, I want you to go get him a Bible.
Well, I just remember him talking about going to church when he was a little boy. That's the first thing he told us the first time. He remembered going to church as a little boy and how sweet that was and how much he loved that. And then God laid it on me, get that man a Bible, you know. So we bought him a Bible and give it to him the last day we were there.
And he showed when we were leaving, we were getting ready to check out, and the nurses came in, and he pointed it out to them, and they're like, "Where did you get that?" And he told them, you know, we had gotten that, and I given him that Bible, and I'll say, it really wasn't me, and it wasn't him, it was God, but his attitude, I would not, and maybe I would have been able to go through it the way he went through it if I had been called up to walk that, but I looked at him, and I was amazed by how he handled everything. And then one of the other nurses, when they were letting us check out, when we finally got to leave, he said, I've never seen somebody go home as quick as they're letting you go home, being as open. And when we say open, his arms were still like hamburger meat. That's what he would always use. But, you know, the skin was gone, so he was at a risk for infection. But he said, every time I came in here, there was somebody in this room praying with you. And that spoke to them, to see his attitude and to know that it was from God.
Bad situation, but positive experience.
It was a sweetness that made me just think, you know, how grateful I was that I still had him.
One of the times that stood out for me was going back. I was there for 10 days, and then pretty much I was confined to the house for 10 days until I had skin covering because the infection was such a high risk. But I wanted to go back and see my nurses that had been in there because pretty special call to be a nurse and to see what they've got to see and clean up every day with burn victims. So we went back seeing them. That was a great experience. But I asked where Mr. Gamble's was because he wasn't in the room. I didn't see him when I went by. I was going to speak to him. And they had moved him, prepping him to go home. And so the nurse, one of my favorite nurses, had walked me back there as a male nurse that, I enjoyed a lot. Walked back there and talked to Mr. Gambles. And when I walked in that room, in my opinion, and you walked in with me, he was smiling from ear to ear.
His face was lit up.
I mean, lit up to the point that literally, I wouldn't call myself an emotional person. I have been since this incident, but, I had to leave. I was just, to me, I saw Jesus in him. I walked in and it was unbelievable.
His attitude had completely changed. And you could see joy in him. And you don't see a lot of joy.
And, I laid there 6 days with him, and there was not a glimmer of anything, but we went back in 10 days later, and it said a lot to me. I felt like I saw Jesus in his smile that day.